In 1975, a forgotten village in Benin learned the deadliest truth. Evil doesn't always wear a mask, sometimes it wears a smile. They were called the Iyangbo, the hidden ones, midwives by day, shadows by night. And when they touched the Okon family, the war began. First, the youngest was taken, returned cold and silent, humming lullabies backward. Then blood claimed the eldest. Mama Eyo didn't bow. She declared war, and heaven answered. The bell rang with no hands to strike it. A holy wind swept the village, and light, burning truth, fell from the sky. They fell, some into dust, some into the earth, and some into the arms of the god they once mocked. The Okons lost 2 children, but in their loss, they delivered a whole village. The village of Ideka was the kind of place that maps forgot. Nestled deep within the green heart of old Benin territory, the village was surrounded by dense forest, broken shrines, and the silence of secrets long buried. Time itself seemed to move slower in the village of Edeka. It was 1975, but you wouldn't know it. No electricity, no vehicles, no radios. Just bush path, wooden drums, and the occasional echo of something unbroken, something waiting. Ideka was not an ordinary village. The people went about their daily lives with a quiet dread, careful not to look too long at strangers, and never speaking once the sun dipped behind the palm trees. Everyone knew it. There was something wrong with the land. Strange death, disappearing children, cows giving birth to stillborn cows with no eyes. But no one dared talk about the cause, except in whispers. They spoke of the Iyangbo, the hidden ones, women who moved through the night like wind, who communed with ancient spirits buried beneath the earth. They weren't ghosts. They were women from the village itself, midwives, market sellers, the woman who smiled too much, the widow who never aged. By day they were normal, but by night their true faces surfaced, faces no one lived long enough to describe. The people feared them, not just because they were powerful, but because they were everywhere. For years, the village suffered in silence, until the Iyangbo crossed a line. They touched the Okon family. The Okons were different. Papa Efe Okon was a tall, broad-shouldered hunter turned farmer. His voice was deep, his silence even deeper. He was a man who had seen things in the forest that made him kneel to pray at midnight. His wife, Mama Eyo, was a woman of faith and dreams. People said she spoke to angels in her sleep. Together, they had 5 children: Joseph, Aidu, Ese, Fon, and little Imade, their youngest and brightest. Years earlier, when white missionaries from Calabar arrived and built a small mud church on the edge of the forest, most villagers stayed away, but not the Okons. They were the first to welcome the missionaries, the first to kneel before the cross, the first to declare Jesus is Lord. And perhaps that was their crime. One morning, the Okon family woke to find dead chickens arranged in a perfect circle around their compound. No blood, no feathers, just corpses with necks twisted in unnatural angles. Their air smelled of iron. That same night, Mfon woke screaming, claiming to see a woman with no face standing at the foot of his bed. Papa Efe went to the village elders. They gave him silence. Their faces were full of fear, but no answers. That was the first sign that something terrible was about to begin. A week later, Imade disappeared. She had gone to fetch water from the stream behind the compound. That was the last time anyone saw her. No footprints, no struggle. Just a tiny, burnt handprint on the wooden door of her room. Mama Eyo collapsed at the altar of the little church. The missionaries gathered, placing hands on her, praying in tongues. She screamed, not in agony, but in a language no one understood. Her eyes upward, her body shaking violently. That night, the skies turned a shade of red that no one in the village had ever seen. Drums were heard deep in the forest, slow, steady, deliberate. But no one had gone in there with drums. It was as if the forest itself was mourning or preparing for war. 3 days later, Papa Efe returned with Imade in his hands. But she was not the same. She did not speak. Her skin was cold. Her eyes were dull and yellow like rotten palm oil. And all she did was sit in a corner, humming the same lullaby over and over, but backwards. Then Joseph, the eldest son, began to bleed from his mouth. He coughed violently, day and night, as if something inside him was being ripped out. The missionaries fasted and prayed. They poured oil on him, laid hands, and anointed the compound. But on the 3rd day, Joseph died. They buried him before dawn. The birds did not sing that morning. That same day, Mama Eyo, in her grief, declared war. "We will not bow to Baal," she said. "Let them come. We are ready." The missionaries joined her. They began an unrelenting prayer chain, day and night, fasting and singing, calling down heaven. The Holy Spirit was summoned, and the ground itself began to shake. The Iyango responded. Led by Madame Ekwa, the 9-fingered midwife, they came to the Okon compound one night. No footsteps, just shadows gliding. They hovered above the ground, faces hidden in cloaks of night. They didn't speak, they just watched, smiling. Then Imade began to convulse. She floated 3 feet off the ground, her body twisting unnaturally. Her mouth opened, and a voice that was not hers came forth. "You challenge us in our land. This girl is ours. You cannot stop what has already begun." The air turned thick. The oil lamps in the church flickered. The forest began to whisper. But then, from the small wooden church behind the compound, the bell rang by itself. A wind blew through the village, warm, strong, and holy. The missionaries began to shout. One fell to his knees, weeping. The Holy Spirit had entered the battlefield. The witches screeched. Some burst into flame, not fire, but light. Burned them not with heat, but with truth. Their faces began to show, twisted, animalistic, ancient. Madame Ekwa tried to resist, but her knees buckled. One by one, the witches fell. Some vanished into dust. One tried to run and was swallowed by the earth. Others, seeing the power of God, began to weep. Madame Ekwa cried out, I see him, I see the light. Mercy, mercy. The battle lasted till dawn. By morning, it was quiet again. The trees no longer whispered. The air smelled of dew and burnt incense. And not all was joy. Essie, the third child, who had prayed and fasted more than anyone, collapsed at the altar steps, her hands raised, her voice a whisper. It is finished. She died with a smile on her lips. The Okon family had lost 2 children, but in their loss, they delivered a village. Ideka changed. The remaining witches surrendered their lives to Christ. They burnt their shrines. They testified. Even the elders, who once feared the Iyangu, came out in the open, confessing how they had lived in silence for too long. The missionaries remained for many years. The church grew. A school was built. Then, a small clinic. Pilgrims came from surrounding villages to hear the tale of the family who fought witches and won. And in the middle of the village square, under a mango tree, danced a simple stone with these words carved in old Benin script. Salvation was bought with blood, was sealed by light. And in the old mud church, there still hangs a photo of the full Okon family. All 7, even Joseph and Essie, smiling hand in hand before the war began.
Please subscribe to watch more of our videos. Thank you.